Airing first on Asheville FM, WSFM LP 103.3 in Asheville, this is The Final Straw Radio, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian radio show broadcasting out of occupied Salagi land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world. This week we air a conversation with Ruchell Magee, the longest-held political prisoner in the U.S., a jailhouse lawyer, and the only prisoner to survive the 1970 Marin County Courthouse Rebellion of August 7th. You'll also hear from Claude Marks of the Freedom Archives. The Final Straw is a proud member of the Channel Zero network of anarchist podcasts, and here's a jingle from another member of CZN.
What's up, y'all? I'm Pearson, host of Coffee with Comrades. Coffee with Comrades is rooted in militant joy. Our hope is to cultivate a warm and inviting atmosphere, like walking into your favorite coffee shop to sit down with some of your close friends and share a heart-to-heart conversation. New episodes premiere every Tuesday, so be sure to smash that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode. We are proud to be a part of the Channel Zero network.
And now some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll call like a wall.
The fart goblin buffoons of intimidation are trying to save democracy. They're abusing their authority to steal the presidential election from me, and from Russian hackers, and from North Korean counterfeiters. I think the FBI uncovered my plot to have North Korean counterfeiters write millions of bogus mail-in ballots, and to have Russian hackers fill them out with information and identities stolen from Citibank and others. I would get millions of votes. Probably it wasn't hard for even the FBI, as challenged as they are, to uncover my plot. I did, after all, talk about it on the radio. So in defense of this vast electoral swindle, they've shut down all my communications, preventing me from coordinating the North Koreans and the Russians. The audacity. If I'm right, the FBI is engaged in flagrant election interference, trying to stop me from stealing the election fair and square. I think it's no coincidence that my communications are shut off until March, until after the election, the inauguration, and my 90-day plan for taking down the United States. If you haven't read it yet, my 90-day plan is posted at swain2020.org. Also, if you go there, you'll find a photo of me in front of a burning flag. Yup, that's my smiling face, a face for the radio. You can also listen to my rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. I recorded that at Warren Correctional before they framed me up and sent me back to the Super Duper Max, who then sent me here so the FBI could shut off my phone and email. At least, I think it's the FBI. There's no way to know. Nobody will give me any explanation. Nobody will reveal who did this, largely because they're deathly afraid. At every government agency, whenever my name is mentioned, officials scramble on their hands and knees to climb under their desks like it's a tornado drill. They suck their thumbs, close their eyes, and try to summon their spirit animals. They shut off the engines to their planes, retreat to their minds, to their happy places. That's the effect from just mentioning my name. I imagine Special Agent Snowbucket, the FBI jagwagon assigned to me, gets so scared he pees just a little when he pulls up my 4,000-page FBI file. Someone please stroke Special Agent Snowbucket's hair and say soothing things to him until he stops quivering. It's gonna be okay, Special Agent. It's gonna be okay. Really, though, the fart goblins aren't afraid of me. They're afraid of you. Well, and North Koreans, counterfeiters, and Russian hackers. What I mean is, they're not afraid of what I'm doing. They're afraid of what you're gonna do. They know their program is indefensible. They know the 8,000-year swindle of civilization has never worked as advertised. They're just hoping you don't figure it out. So they really don't want me making observations that they know will resonate with you, particularly at the pivotal moment when the large system is vulnerable. Confronted be the crisis of its own failings. on displace as a miserable flim-flam it has always been. So it's in that context that my run for president is so potentially dangerous. I promise to destroy the entire matrix, the governmental and economic system that was set up on the promise of serving you, but has ended up forcing you to serve them. If elected, I would make sure we dance naked around a bonfire where the White House used to be. I'm a bullet in the brain pan of the body politic. A needle in its veins. So maybe that's why the FBI shut me down. They know a Swain presidency would look like the final scene of Fight Club, with everything crashing down. And they know more and more people are seriously pondering life without the fart goblins running the show. Matchet wheeling, Molotov throwing, ski mask clad, dumpster touring, savage cannibal Swainiacs are popping up everywhere. So on second thought, maybe I lied. It's not going to be okay, Special Agent Snowbucket. It's really not. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain, writing candidate for president in 2020, and I approve of this message.
You can write to Sean Swain at his latest address at Sean Swain, number 2015638, Buckingham Correctional, P.O. Box 430, Dillwyn, Virginia, 23936. You can find his past writings, recordings of his audio segments, and updates on his case at seanswain.org, or now follow him on Twitter at @SwainRocks. If you could please introduce yourself, your name, and where you're at for the audience, that would be awesome.
Ruchell Cinque. I'm being held prisoner at California State Prison of Vacaville.
How long have you been in the California State Prison System?
Over 56 years now.
Can you talk about how you came to be in prison in the first place, and say a few words about what happened in the Marin Courthouse?
And when I get to that part, I don't say too much on that case because it's still pending in court. In other words, I can tell you what the reason for my purpose and my role was, same thing as I'm saying in court right now. My role was to expose the Los Angeles County conviction down there where I was sent to prison on 2 different false pleas by lawyers. Guilty and insanity pleas in my name. They haven't told that story right in the news leader to this day. What I'm saying right now, it's in court. And according to the way it's said in court, nobody refutes what I say. Nobody.
Claude Marks is one of the founders of the Freedom Archive's nonprofit movement educational archive based in San Francisco, which, among other things, manages an email news list updating on political prisoners in occupied Palestine and the so-called U.S. Claude is also a former political prisoner related to the Puerto Rican independence movement. So you were politically active in the Bay Area at the time of the August 7th, 1970 Marin County Courthouse Rebellion, in which Cinque became a participant. Can you talk about the impacts of that event at the time and the atmosphere that you witnessed it creating for the trial that followed?
Well, I think we need to understand Ruchell in the context of a lot that's going on in that period. For myself, I was actually working for an educational radio station, which I started doing at the age of 18 as a field reporter, which was a very grounded education in terms of movement because there was a lot going on. I made a choice to, in fact, drop out of the university in order to pursue that. And one of the things that meant was a very quick education in terms of resistance from within the prisons. So going back to the Soledad brothers case, where 3 people were charged in basically a struggle within the prison, within Soledad prison in California, that involved a group of people in the prison that were highly organized and politicized, really struggling against a level of abuse by guards, driven by the nature of policing in prisons, driven by racism. That original case, which was later to become known as the Soledad brothers case, involved John Cluchette, George Jackson, and Fleta Drumgo. And once the charges happened in that case was transferred to Marin because the prisoners themselves are transferred to San Quentin. There was a lot going on in San Quentin as well. The level of organizing internally was very impactful, and it meant that, in any given week, there would be various incidents within the prison. So in 1970, there was actually a case in which Ruchell Magee was testifying in the Marin court. During that testimony, Jonathan Jackson, who was the brother of George Jackson, basically raided the Marin courtroom, tossed weapons to William Christmas, James McClain, and Ruchell Magee. They seized the hour, as it were, and attempted to escape by taking a judge and an assistant district attorney and 3 jurors hostages. That audacious move really was to expose the public to the brutality and the racist conditions inside, and had a specific goal of freeing the Soledad brothers. That included Jonathan's brother, George. At that point, James McClain was on trial for assaulting a guard in the wake of another prisoner, Fred Billingsley's murder by prison officials in San Quentin. That happened in early 1970. We know now that the response of the police and the guards in San Quentin who were responsible for security in the courtroom was to basically open fire. When the shooting stopped, the judge, Jonathan Jackson, William Christmas, and James McClain were dead. Ruchell Magee was unconscious and seriously wounded, as was the prosecutor, and a juror was injured as well. All of this was in August 7th, 1970. And mind you, the context was a tremendous amount of conflict inside, particularly between Black prisoners and the staff, the guards, the cops. And that leads to a major trial for Ruchell Magee in which he's charged.
I went over there to testify on behalf of James McClain, and I also testified about the Los Angeles County frame-up that got me in prison, made me a target. And while I was testifying, that's when things come down over there. I had 2 chances. I could have refused to go along with the rebellion, or I could go along with it and have a chance to reach TV, radio station. I went along with the rebellion. And in so doing, I was charged with murder, kidnap, and conspiracy. But when I get to trial, I explain the same thing that I was trying to get to the TV with, where the jury accepted my story. They didn't accept the state story. They found me not guilty. The critter comes up suppressed.
My earliest memory of Ruchell specifically had to do with going to that trial, which was in Santa Clara, south of San Francisco. The importance of understanding Ruchell, I think, is more than just the fact that he's been locked up in California since 1963. He was actually locked up in Louisiana for many years, starting at the age of 16 in the 1950s, and got caught up in a pretty minor thing in Southern California. And that leads to his doing a bit in California State, where he remains today at the age of 81. It's said that he's the longest held political prisoner in the world, various things. The fact is he's basically grown up since the age of 16, mainly behind bars, and is a very political person. The legal issues are complicated, but in essence, it's ridiculous that anybody would have to put that much time in behind bars. And one of his, own arguments is predicated on exactly that life experience.
Can you talk about what the case is you're trying to bring to the Supreme Court right now?
Yes, it's a jury acquittal. It's a jury acquittal which I was found not guilty of kidnapping on the 1970 indictment charge. And it's also showing where the acquittal is being concealed. I don't know for sure whether even the lie is being filed this time. That's why I want to file it from the outside, just in case if it's not being presented to the Supreme Court. I want people outside to file that same writ, but pay the filing fee. In other words, that puts it on watch. Well, what's in that document is what is better than the video that was in the George Floyd case, because ain't nobody can contradict the jury.
What did the jury say?
They gave acquittal to the trial judge. The thing was, he didn't record it. By not recording it, it's just like considering that it don't exist. But later down the line, after they did a double jeopardy conviction on me, the jury presented evidence that the acquittal was concealed. You know, they even made public statements. The jury even filed with the Department of Justice, FBI, asking for an investigation into the suppression. That's why they don't want no hearing on the case, because the jury witness right now to what I'm talking about. The jury done filed affidavits, which is declarations under oath, giving testimony that they gave acquittal to the judge. Well, nobody wants to allow this hearing, so what they'll say is, I'm abusing the process of the court when I file more than one document saying the same thing, but I'm not getting a hearing. Well, that's where you need some outside contact to look into what you're talking about and what they're doing. You know, once they put that on you, next litigant, that means abusing the process of the court by filing more than one document. Bill Clinton made that part of the law.
And so this is in relation to the more serious, like, felony kidnapping charge of the two, right?
Yeah.
That's where the acquittal came down?
Yeah, this arrived out of the August the 7th, 1970 rebellion. You know, when the stuff went down in Marin County. Well, that's what the whole deal is. When somebody in California, I don't know about this, I know a few other states do this, Louisiana too, but when somebody do something, got a law passed, do something ain't got no business, you know, and they got family or something in the office too, don't nobody want to hear nothing against them, say nothing about them. People be scared. But when it's just in the open, then people will talk about it.
At one point, it appeared that you had pled guilty and then were attempting to retract.
I'm glad you asked that question. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I entered a plea of guilty when a lawyer, the judge, and the prosecutor was playing a game. The lawyer acted stuntman for the prosecutor, putting on a show with double jeopardy prosecutor in a jurisdiction which was Santa Clara County. They had no jurisdiction to retry me. So I ended up pleading guilty in order to speak for myself and make a record of how they was avoiding and covering up the evidence of what I was talking about. I want to retry me again on it. Okay, bottom line, a guilty plea to something you've been found not guilty is not what the paper is written on. I proved that too when I moved to withdraw the plea. The same day I entered, the same day I moved to withdraw it. And it was all because it forced up on me to make my own statements. There's no case kidnap for me to plead guilty to. There's no kidnap charge. I was acquitted on that. That's why they got to hide the acquitter.
And can you talk about the documentation that you have of the acquittal?
Yeah, that's the one that's going to the Supreme Court. Now, we got another document that's challenging that Los Angeles thing, the one that got me in prison. That was in the California Supreme Court. Case number is S-26-34-67 before the California Supreme Court in San Francisco. That document shows a kangaroo court, 1963-1965, charged me with kidnapping and rob. That's what I was trying to get away from. They put me in prison, made me a target. Now, watch this. Ain't nobody will come forth and defy what I said in that writ. Well, lawyer plead me guilty before a jury that I had pleaded not guilty. I presented evidence of innocence. Charged me with kidnapping to rob somebody for $10. I proved that was a damn lie. Even the person that charged me with charged me with kidnap robbery, They run him out of courtroom. Couldn't use his testimony. What put me in prison? Lawyer gets up, a PD, not my lawyer, a PD, jumps up and pleads guilty to a jury. That's trickery. That's jury tampering. That's what I've been trying to get out. So August 7th, that's what I was moving to expose. I was gagged, handcuffed, muzzled, 1965, July 26th, 1965, for objecting to that damn plea they put in my name, not guilty by reason of insanity. And now when they get the jury in the jury room making deliberation, and that was in 65 now, they withdrew the plea. But it was too late to withdraw it then. That's what got me in prison. And that's how they got me in prison. That's what they don't want to talk about. That's what they don't want to talk about. They would have talked, and had I made it to TV radio station August the 7th, 1970, they would have had to talk then. They'd have had to explain who was behind it, why you did it. They'd have had to explain it. Well, right now they're trying to stay away from court proceedings to keep from explaining. It was wrong. My family, man, my mother, father, people died, man, in agony, man, in total misery behind this damn frame up because they couldn't understand it, man. You know, this is not just something this is what you call it's a state of war thing going on against us, man. I get to prison, I come in contact with other people that have been railroaded the same way I was. The same way. Hell, I'm talking about the yard full of them, talking about the same damn thing. Same damn lawyer, judge, prosecutor.
This is The Final Straw, and you're hearing political prisoner Ruchell Magee and former political prisoner Claude Marks talk about Ruchell's struggle to be released from prison after 57 years. Can you talk about the long-lasting importance of the case and the impact of Ruchell's experience?
Ruchell Magee was part of that whole prison movement from the very beginning. He's often overlooked because the case itself against Ruchell Magee was the case against Ruchell Magee and Angela Davis. And his role was as a participant in the actual courtroom rebellion, and the charges against Angela Davis had to do with the origin of the weapons that Jonathan Jackson had. Their cases were severed, and Ruchell remains in prison, and Angela Davis was acquitted. It's interesting that in the case of Ruchell Magee, the jury actually found him not guilty of the most egregious charge against him, which was basically kidnapping and extortion. And that conviction isn't on the books. Once the cases were severed, his main struggle was to represent himself in court because he didn't really have faith in any of the legal people that were assigned to him. You know, his experience in the courts is very complex. He's been beaten by guards in the courtroom in front of a jury, in front of a Judge Walker, who didn't intercede. He's been called insane by a federal judge named Conti in San Francisco, basically over his demand to defend himself and the context which he himself established, which is that as a black man in the United States being unjustly imprisoned, that he has a right to rebel. It's his quote is slavery 400 years ago, slavery today, it's the same, but with a new name. And that argument is really at the heart of how he identifies himself and how he justifies the ongoing resistance that he expresses.
Can you talk about these like being done dirty by DAs and your desire to argue on your own behalf and your experience as a black man in the California legal system?
Yeah, but see, had I represented myself, I wouldn't be talking to you on the phone right now. I'd have been a free man. I'd have cleaned them out, because you know what I would have did? I would have brought back the same damn thing that I brought to the jury in San Francisco on trial. I'd have brought that damn L.A. County, because watch this. If I filed a writ of habeas corpus in open, canceling that conviction in Los Angeles, that's why I didn't want Angela Davis to separate the trial, because I had them in open court then with spectators in the court. I filed a habeas corpus, they couldn't answer it. They couldn't answer it. They stalled. They stalled for time. Then they put a whole lot of stuff down, like if what I was doing in court was keeping Angela Davis from getting out on bail. That's why I went for that separation of trial there. That was the mistake there right there, too, because that kept me on isolation. Because as long as you're isolated, you got to represent yourself, that is, in ways that you can, but not be considered as your own lawyer. You just have to keep up, and then you're going to sound like a fool by jumping up and trying to bring something out. Well, what you're trying to bring out, they're going to push you with words. You know, that's the game played right now. It's a word game, you know.
And didn't they try to dismiss your ability to argue on your own behalf by making claims of insanity or IQ levels or whatever?
Yeah. I had that right. One judge, March the 20th, 1972, Judge Leonard Ginsburg, he granted that right. Granted me the right to represent myself. That's when I had filed a habeas corpus challenging that Los Angeles conviction also. So he granted that right because he seen I was qualified for it. But when I got to San Francisco, for change of venue, they took that right away because they had already planned. If a quitter comes up or anything, they already suspected it's going to be a quitter the way I was coming at them because I was coming with the Cinque defense on the right to rebel. Well, that's what happened right there. They didn't want that. They didn't want me to act as my own lawyer. I had to plead guilty to make a statement the way I made mistakes. That record there, kill them dead over here. If we had made it to the TV, radio station like what I already pointed out, my case at this moment is exposing everything Donald Trump, Joe Biden is putting down right now. That's one of the biggest flim flams going. That so-called election thing. The people is pulled right into that. All right, for example, how long has people been hooked into that war that George Bush started that? That's over 11 years now, right? Nobody that haven't got out of that yet. All right, well, the reason for that is that because of that election and where it's going right now. Well, my case exposes that, man, you can make anything out of that document, and I'm talking about open people's eyes, because guess what? It ain't just a document. It's something about slavery and corruption that cannot answer to it without exposing themselves. I don't write nothing, just write stuff. When I write it, I got to have backup to it. If I can't prove it, I don't write it. Man.
What made you take on the name Cinque? Can you talk about the inspiration for that and the statement that you're making with that name?
Yeah, because the Cinque case where he rebelled on the ship, that is history-wise, where he rebelled on the ship, he was kidnapped from Africa.
That was the Amistad, right?
Yeah, and being treated as a slave, being brought over here to be sold. Well, category of my case is the same. They put me in prison, capitalize off of me as a slave. Otherwise, got people paying tax, paying for my bed space, my food, and this here, whatever. We come under the same category. Only difference is between me and the Cinque of old is that I don't get no hearing. Nobody's hearing me in the court. You know? And I had to do what I had to do. Let's fight to get to the press. Okay, I got that since I survived. I lived to get to a jury had a little sense over in San Francisco. I gave them the story of the Cinque defense. They believed me, but they didn't believe the state. And they caught them in all kind of lies. They acquitted me. They acquitted me, and when they acquitted me, instead of the fool reading the judge, an old judge had, instead of him reading the verdict in the open court, he concealed that, refused to do that, then subjected me to double jeopardy, all of that embarrassment and stuff going on over there in Santa Clara County. I had to put me out some kind of strategy. Strategy was to plead guilty and then turn around and move to withdraw the plea just to point out how they was doing me, or you double jeopardy me. You don't even have jurisdiction to do what you're doing here. They didn't pay it no attention, you know. But today, we're back again in the same damn spot where we at now. Put this, what you got is recorded, man.
That's correct.
Watch this. Henry, which is I-N-R-E, Henry, Ruchell Magee, case number S-263467, before the California Supreme Court in San Francisco. This particular writ of habeas corpus challenges the Los Angeles conviction. The Los Angeles conviction is what I was talking about that brought me into the Cinque version. It's a frame-up case. The same thing is in the California Supreme Court I put before the jury. When Jonathan Jackson come in the courtroom in Marin County, August the 7th, I was testifying to the same thing. That's right there, what I just pointed out to you just then. The same thing. Nobody checked to see what I'm saying. You check to see what I'm saying, you're talking about well, McGee, what you mean about slavery or illegal grip? False conviction, man, or false plea by officers of the court pleading me not guilty by reason of insanity. That's during the watch ride time, 1965, July. I got to go to court on this bullshit, not guilty by reason of insanity. Then when they get to the end of the proceeding, they claim it's a mistake. That's what they say, but the jury was allowed to convict me on that. All right, now we're in this court right now, California Supreme Court, showing where you did wrong on this. Nobody won't answer because they can't answer. Somebody in San Francisco needs to get a copy of what I'm talking about in that California and let you see it, because it don't have no riff-raff in it like I'm talking right now, because I'm talking, I know it in riddles, right, because of the speed they got me on. We don't have about 15 minutes at a time. But anyway, if you know anybody in San Francisco, go on and check. Get a copy of it. Don't cost us $5 to get a copy of the whole thing. Send you a copy. It's gold, man.
So right now you're seeking counsel, right, to be able to challenge your incarceration. Can you talk about what you need from the outside?
Right at this time, right now, with the case headed for into U.S. Supreme Court, what I need right now is like this station here, if you can make some kind of efforts to raise at least $500 where I can have that court filing fee when they charge, just because that's been there out. With the court filing fee, that means people outside of me done put their money up, put up their funds, and it means independent filing. They got to hold an evidentiary here or show cause. That's all needed in my case is to show cause on the Attorney General of California. Is true or is that not true? Jury acquitted in this case, and read it. That's the end of the line. Nobody don't want to do that because they don't want to perjure themselves on record, especially when nobody's looking at them. Yeah. If they docket it, that means they're not gonna come with that job no more about that filing fee stuff, you know.
It would just be about getting a lawyer on the outside to take up your case, to file that on your behalf and pass in the $500 then? Is that the way to do it?
Yep. And you can file it, see if you file it, don't change a damn word in it. If you file it, I'll go home in days. If a lawyer will file what I got before the California Supreme Court, I go home in days. Because either case automatic opens the other case. That's how bad the cases are. And that's how they both have that nature, the same issue. Because I was rebelling against what happened in Los Angeles. Hey, the jury sees it while nobody else can't see it. The jury in San Francisco see what I'm talking about, but nobody else don't see it. Something strange there.
Have you heard back from Benjamin Crump, the civil rights attorney that I know you've reached out to for representation? Have you had any luck with that venue?
No. I done wrote to about 1,000 lawyers. They don't respond. But I still write to them. See, because you never know who is who. Wow. I think Benjamin Trump, he'll respond if I get it in the open. I think he'll respond if your radio station would make a check-in on it, I think you'll respond then.
This is The Final Straw, and you're hearing political prisoner Ruchell Magee and former political prisoner Claude Marks talk about Ruchell's struggle to be released from prison after 57 years.
A lot of his work as a jailhouse lawyer has in fact resulted in many, many other prisoners getting a level of so-called justice and a level of relief, if not release, because of Ruchell's involvement in their legal struggles. It's ironic, though, because, in fact, in this day and age, it becomes far clearer to see how, appealing to the very judicial process that is so racist and prejudicial can't be the only way of really dealing with or exercising your rights. And yet that's the main tool that he has, and uses it in a very skilled way. His arguments about his original conviction in California, dating from 1963, has to do with a very typical, form of so-called justice in the United States, which, looked at a young black man and basically put him away and kept him there for his life, even though he's never been sentenced to a life sentence. So the argument is political, that as someone who's unjustly imprisoned, he has every right to take matters into his own hands and free himself when the opportunity arises. And that was the argument around the trial post-Marin Courthouse Rebellion.
You've been in for so long. Also, you're an elder. It's a time of pandemic, and they should get you out of the prisons because it's unsafe, and it has nothing to do with a $10 bag of weed.
Yeah, but see, under the co-violence, that virus thing, on the elder thing, they don't let political prisoners like me out on that. They know how to dance around that. Like, if you don't let me out of prison on the grounds of me being illegal in prison, and it's got backup proof, documented proof, if you don't let me out on that, you know you're not going to let me out on nothing else, because if you do, I'm going to expose all of that. I'd expose all of that. What does it look like if I was standing up right now before a crowd and I asked the governor of California, or either the attorney general of California, hey, these I admit there's a jury acquitted in my case, exposed, concealed, suppressed ever since 1973. But he can't do that without forging himself. That's why they don't allow no hearing in my case. If you answer, then they'll talk. They're just like making me Cinque again, the old Cinque. You see, anytime, especially with black, anytime somebody black got something important that benefit other black people, man, if it ain't assassination of character, it's assassination of the person. And then my situation is, when I was put in prison, I was not a highly educated person. I would come out the country, Louisiana, little small town. But I had good sense. Comprehension, got good memories too. But it's something I learned to being black, man, and as a fighter. You gotta have good memories, and when you got it, you gotta have some backup. Always backup. Now, if you filing these documents, I don't just be filing, I do it with a strategy. Everything that I've been saying about that jury acquittal, man, why do I keep talking about that acquittal? Because nobody can distract it. They can't distort it. All they can do is isolate. They gotta isolate me. With access to this telephone, it's pretty hard to do that too now. Because I got access now to a few radio stations. What we did a little investigation on why that acquittal was not recorded. You know who's behind this is same clique that's running this election and all of this other jive going. It's the same little clique. Richard Nixon's little old gang done spread it to way down the line from Bill Clinton on down to this clown they got in that White House now, Donald Trump, and this other clown, Joe Biden. These dudes are flim-flam artists. If I was right now before people, I could pull the cover off of them good, but pulling it off on this phone, they'll stay ahead of you. And somebody got the answer to this, especially the governor of the California Attorney General. They got the answer to this. You can't drive over that law in front of all the people out there and let them know you violate that law, and then got all these people in prison while you going more crime than anybody you got locked up in prison. You know, that's what they're doing now with that jury acquittal. When somebody messes with a jury acquittal, they got to be criminal stupid. I mean criminal stupid, because you don't mess with that without assaulting the whole jury system. And the jury system do what? It represents millions, hundreds of millions of people in this country, man. It ain't no handful of clowns. Got no power like that, man. They just drive over something. Well, they have to hide. But when you ask them questions in the open, they scatter like chickens. They run. Because their lies don't hold up to nothing in front of people. You know, that's why I keep getting them in the court, because in court, the answer's under oath. And when you come under oath, you got to you tell the truth, but you spread yourself, you make yourself criminal in front of people. You know what's going to happen. They know what's going to happen. You know, so they got to play wise. Stay out of the limelight of being questioned. And answering the goddamn question on something that's right. See, what that boy, Jonathan Jackson, he didn't lose his life just shooting at nobody or trying to kill nobody. No, that's not that there, man. The man was trying to do something to help his brother. James McClain was doing something never been talked about, which was to expose his case on appeal then. And guess who was Attorney General in James McClain's case at the time? Or at least he was district attorney in James McClain's case at the time when McClain was put in prison. A clouded made federal judge named D.L. Jensen. Anybody in Oakland at the time would tell you. Corrupt as hell, boy. But he made federal judge. Everybody that had a hand in concealing the jury acquittal in my case, 3 of them at least, Marvin Cummings, who was the trial judge, William Ingram, who was the sentencing judge, and Timothy A. Worden, who was the prosecuting attorney, who was attorney general, all made a federal court judgment. Now, what we talking about now? We talking about what's called a Nixon program. As they go up, when they commit crime against people, they get promoted. All this is in my case. When you exposing my case, you're exposing this damn thing right here. All this goes into that election, man. Sounds like a lie, but it's the damn hardcore truth. And if you talk about that's why I say my case is more powerful evidence, or as much evidence as that video in George Floyd's case. That is first educating people, waking people up. Because nobody believes what happened to me that's happening to people every day. That's what I'm talking about. Prison is full of people complaining about false convictions, but they never hear it in the courts unless they use that strategy to make contact with people outside. All right, let me show you something. If I'd have found my document through your radio station that I sent to the Supreme Court in Washington, guess what? It would be filed. See the difference there? But if I found it from prison, where they all eyes on what? That's what I'm talking about. Well, that's the strategy. You got to reach people outside that eat this damn circle that we in. They done hold us down to where we in a circle now. We vote for what they say, but not for what they do. All this going on in this damn program going down. We can beat them, though, with what come out in July. That protest come out in July, put a devil in their hamper. Because they can't silence that many people. Especially when they know what they see with their eyes. So lip service won't do nothing to help them on that spot there. Oh, yeah. Just like they don't do right now, like get rid of some of them laws they use, let police break in people's homes because it just got caught in that George Floyd thing. Just like they don't straighten that up, they'll straighten up this other thing about access to the court and get rid of that Bill Clinton, which is a Richard Nixon thing. It ain't Bill Clinton. Richard Nixon through Bill Clinton. That Anti-Terrorist Act, restriction on habeas corpus, restriction on the 1964 Civil Rights Act. All right. They'll get rid of all of that when we expose it. Because what? It's a myth. And it don't serve no other purpose once it's exposed to the people that know about it. They get rid of it. try to come up with something else. And you will see people released from prison. You don't have to be none of this virus release. They're going to release them on the grounds they're illegal in prison. They don't want to face the embarrassment of people being illegal, this many people being illegal and in prison. It's a slave operation. That's all it is. Who give them permission? Who give them jurisdiction? Ain't nobody can show jurisdiction for this bullshit. I had no lawyer. That's what my case is about. I had no lawyer. Nobody to defend me against the lies and fraud that was being put down in the name of the people. You ever hear of somebody going before a jury, not guilty, going before a jury, then proving the crime don't exist, and then somebody stand up in the courtroom and plead guilty in their name? That's before the California Supreme Court. That's what we're talking about right there. Guilty. I went back on a reversal in 1965, which was right around the time with the Watt riot. Then they pleaded not just about reason being said. Now, when I made that guilty plea to the charge over in Santa Clara County, when I admitted that guilty plea, which is in the Marin County case, and I used that to try to call the fool to come to the court on motion to withdraw the plea, don't show up. The lawyer, the district attorney, don't show up. You know why? Because I was proving what I was saying. Put me in prison illegal, I got a right to rebel. And tell you, hey, anything necessary, I got to do that to save my life. I'm fighting from being a target by a bunch of fools. Goddamn fool playing like this so damn high and mighty with words, hey. And at the same time playing above suspicion and more crime than anybody in the penitentiary. And the cold part about all of this, we got all of these big mouths talking this about protecting this interest of the public, but ain't none of these big mouth dogs talking about nothing about what's going on with these damn prison holding people illegal in prison and denying them access to the court. Ain't nobody talking about that except people in prison.
Names like Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow or the Free Alabama movement might remind us that this argument is an ongoing thing, that slavery, chattel slavery, developed into the black codes, into Jim Crow, and standardized around the country.
Reference to slavery and slave rebellion in taking the name is very much at the heart of who he is in the world, and often overlooked. He's actually one of the first prisoners to kind of establish that sense of modern day slavery, predating, the books that you mentioned and the references of movements and people who follow him. And he's also overlooked frequently in terms of the ways in which he's contributed to many other prisoners gaining some level of legal equity and dealing with the system, using the tools of their own laws to challenge their power over people who are locked up.
Can you say a few words about the importance of Black August?
I'm definitely inspired, especially by the people that stood up for that brother, man, George Floyd. People should never stop doing that right there, because that's more for protection-wise in the community. That's more protection than all of this stuff going down about the president election thing, because actually, realistic, man, it's not no damn election thing no more. It's all a hype. It's Donald Trump and this Joe Biden and Harris, Kamala Harris, whatever the name is. All that's a heist now, man, to keep people confused and twisted. But people say, right now, people be better off not to even vote in that stuff now. Because, well, I just say, well, McGee, how you know all this here? Well, the reason I know about it is because what's going on now around that election thing, that's the same thing that's going on in jury trials, like a rigged, selected jury thing, man. People be better off not to even go there and be voting on that, because without the people trust in this job-ass system, it won't work, man, against us. It won't work against us because they can't pull no tricks on us. The tricks are set up when the people don't know what's going on, and they going down there voting thinking they're getting somebody better than who's there before. But all you have to do to find out that's a damn lie, just look at what's going on in this Black August thing. What went on in August the 7th thing? People had to fight for their lives, man, trying to get a chance to speak publicly, trying to be heard publicly. That's all. That's what that was about.
what do you think would make the sort of changes that would lead to black liberation, that would lead to an end to the systemic violence and the healing or the beginning of a new country?
Well, beginning of a new country, it could be no better than what you just witnessed with your own eyes with all these people protesting against racism started in July. That's one of the heaviest movements that ever come about. We better hope that people will continue to keep doing it, just what they just did, because they come up with the magic moment, man. They hit the nail. Well, that was a hard fact they had. The facts of police misconduct right in their open eyes. Cold blood murder. All right, well, eyes on the real ugliness that's behind the curtain and hiding behind that damn White House thing. People could see this, they would mobilize, I'm talking about overnight against it, but they can't see it without being educated, man. We got to do something to touch the veil to open their eyes, such as exposing these cases that's covered up, man, on how and who's behind it, how it's being done and who's behind it. Nothing better than this will let us overcome this damn yoke on our neck. Nothing will overcome it. Now, going back to my case was just like what you call a luck, like a luck thing that just happened to come in contact with James McClain, Jonathan Jackson, George Jackson thing. My case was just a luck thing to get into that right there, because they was doing what I was doing, but the only thing is we just had different things moving. Well, that's how the people live right now in the street, in the community. Everybody got a pain, a feeling, irritation, but it's all different forms of corruption and oppression. Some is related to right there in the community. Gang thing, well, that's which is all out of all the stuff right there. Police brutality, different police corruption here, that's out of all of here. But everybody got a thing, but to overcome this, people got to see something. They got to see something. It's got to be so horrible, just like the George Floyd thing. It's got to be so horrible that the people say, "Oh man, I ain't taking this no more." No, damn your lip service politician. I don't want to hear that. If you can't say or do something that's going to take this away, hey, we're not listening. We're going to get us a new government. And we're going to start right now. People start saying right now, they say, hey, we want to vote for judges. We don't want no more politicians appointing the judges, because the things you're appointing, they're not helping us. They're only helping you clowns. So right now, they got to change the laws. If you can't fool the people, you can't beat the people. You can't slay the people. You damn sure can't exploit the people. Well, the politicians know that. Because, see, the enemy is ahead of us on tricks with words, pretending. They can do that good and make our good efforts appear to be bad efforts.
This is The Final Straw, and you're hearing political prisoner Ruchell Magee and former political prisoner Claude Marks talk about Ruchell's struggle to be released from prison after 57 years. Would you talk about the importance of prisoner struggles and keeping in mind people who are being persecuted for political activity? And how does this relate to this year's rebellion against the impunity of police and the killing of George Floyd and so many others?
So the issue of political prisoners is on one hand, very simple, on the other hand, made very complex by the movement. Whenever there are struggles in the streets to contradict the structural power of the United States, there's inevitably going to be a level of conflict. The state itself, which comes to power through violence, through genocide, through, stealing land and oppressing first indigenous people, the whole systematic issues of slavery and how that impacts wars of expansion. The nature of this nation state is predicated on exerting the power of European colonial militarized forces and people who, in their interest, engaged in brutality and warfare. The resistance to that goes all the way back to the first time a European stepped foot in the Western Hemisphere, and has yet to stop And inevitably, that results in people being captured, those that aren't killed, those that survive the brutality, oftentimes are locked up. Sometimes that's because of conscious acts, and sometimes people are just trying to survive and get caught up in this system, which is designed, to enforce white supremacy, male supremacy. It's designed to take any potential for rebellion and lock it up or destroy it. So you have some people who actually organize themselves into a level of conscious organization or resistance, and others that become locked up and oftentimes become conscious as a result. That conflict is really structural. It's really at the center of what prisons are. They're about enforcing power and enforcing social control, motivated by white and male supremacy, and structurally reinforcing who's in power. And any challenge to that is met with force. The other thing is that any potential to organize is also met with force. So in the eyes of the state, there isn't just an out of control or problematic judicial process or prison system. It's really structurally at the center of how they choose to maintain power. You have unaccountable brutality in the streets by the police. You have unaccountable brutality by the military outside the borders of the U.S. and often inside the borders. And then hidden from sight, you have the brutality of the police that aren't subject to being captured on cell phones by people who are already criminalized inside the prisons. In general, we have to look at that large kind of pastiche and say, which side are you on? Are you on the side of resistance, or are you into supporting and maintaining the power of the state in the United States? So that's the government and all the infrastructure and military might that it is willing to unleash. So in that context, particularly with people who have been activists and organizers who find themselves locked up, we have a responsibility to not allow them to be isolated and to not allow the act by the state to lock them up, to essentially neutralize them as part of our community, as part of our struggles, as part of the resistance. That's also true for people who come to consciousness. So, for example, between 2011 and 2013, there were a series of hunger strikes over human rights demands in California. It started off in 2011 with 6,000 prisoners out of a population of about 120,000 going on hunger strike behind a series of demands that were collectively arrived at under the leadership of people who were in Pelican Bay, the control unit prison in California. By the time you get to 2013, you had 30,000 people taking action at the same time in a unified act of resistance by refusing food, which at that point is like a huge percentage of the prison population in the state. That period of organizing internally totally developed a level of consciousness very broadly among prisoners across racial lines, across sets and gangs within the prisons. One of the things that they did is they crafted in 2012 an agreement to end hostilities, which basically says if we unite, we're far more powerful in fighting against our oppressor, the California prison system and the guards and that whole infrastructure. And that there's still a struggle today over the significance and the centrality of that level of organizing, because it did bring people together. I mean, it's rare that you see a demonstration of 30,000 people on the street. It's far more rare, in fact, it's never happened, that you have a mobilization of 30,000 people all in prison cells taking action on the same day in the same way. And I think there's not enough attention paid to the work that it takes to do that. So fundamentally, we on the outside have to really identify ourselves and identify the people who are locked up as part of who we are, as part of our community. And so, yes, there are victories, although not frequent enough, of getting people out. But more importantly, we need to identify ourselves as part of a movement to end the mass imprisonment of people, period, and to speak to these issues that are being raised inside about how human rights are violated. That's why you had the Attica Rebellion in 1971. That's why you had, a series of rebellions that followed that, in which people seized prisons behind the demands of how they're being treated and the immorality and the illegality and the base violence that they were facing on a daily basis. And so it's too easy to allow the corporate media and the state itself to excuse their own culpability in that level of inhuman treatment of other people. So as people organizing in the streets, we have to be making the connections between the outrage when a George Floyd or a Breonna Taylor is killed to the outrage when people die inside, whether it be by COVID or by direct violence on the part of a guard. That should outrage us, and we should oppose it. And our movements need to make that far more central to how they identify, and not just stop at, calling for an end to police violence in the street, but let's call for an end to police violence in the prisons.
I wonder what you have to say about how you've been supported, or if you've been supported over the years.
Where I've been being held, people have been supporting me. I've been getting support from people doing the best they could in the way that they could, just like you're doing right now. The best they could. Some look out for me like on financial side, some on the moral, write to me, expressing the concern thing. But the problem is getting to the people with the message that I want carried out without being distorted, But other than that, people have been doing a marvelous job on enforcement, except, they're not getting the full growth of it. How to work a strategy. What strategy? The strategy is to go to the top. All right? Say your radio station right now, or whoever there, or somebody, you contacted the governor, and you asked the governor, man, do you have a petition before your office for a pardon, petition for a pardon? Is there any reason why the shouldn't have been granted, but this man's been acquitted by a jury? Do you grant pardons in that type of case? Do you grant pardons for a man being acquitted? Them kind of questions openly would long ago free me. And I do believe I got supporters. If they get this whip, they'll do that.
If you were able to get out, if your court challenge goes through, do you know where you would go?
Yeah. My mind is at is I wouldn't be in no one spot. I wouldn't stay in no one spot because I've been labeled. I wouldn't stay in no one spot. I'd be on wheels all the time. My home would be on wheels, because once you got labeled, I don't care whether it's gang label or whatever label in California too, you're not safe, man, around people, man, doing what they're doing this day and time, man. You have to keep on moving. My plan would be to move around, man, and try to help people that's be situated like I've been all through. That's because from what I learned, I could help a lot of people that's down like I'm down right now, which would be, like they say, something complicated to some people on the street. It's not complicated for me to understand and what strategy to use. I would know exactly what to do and how to do it. Keep it in the open. That's anything with a political aspect to it.
You can read more about Ruchell's case and find out how to contact him by visiting prisonersolidarity.com and searching the name Cinque. This is The Final Straw, and I'm Bursa Goodness. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions and suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw Radio, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. This show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned co-op in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a catalog of Firestorm's books and zines, plus a full calendar of events up at their website, firestorm.coop.